The dawn broke blood-red over Valoria Palace, as if the sky itself knew that this day would determine the fate of the kingdom. In the royal chambers, court alchemist Master Aldwin worked through the night, his gnarled hands steady as he tested drop after drop of King Theodore's blood against various reagents. Beside him, Princess Ilara watched with hollow eyes, her faith in the ancient prophecies wavering as hour after hour passed with no conclusive results. Prince William paced the antechamber like a caged lion, his hand never straying far from his sword. Lord Commander Marcus stood guard personally, having dismissed all other guards except his most trusted men. The palace had become a powder keg of suspicion and fear, with Isabella's supporters and William's loyalists eyeing each other across every corridor. "Your Highness," Master Aldwin's voice cracked with exhaustion, and something else. Triumph, perhaps, or fear. "I have found something." William was at the table in 3 strides. "What is it?" "Is it poison?" The old alchemist nodded slowly. "Moonsbane, as the princess suspected. But mixed with something else. Something I've never seen before. A catalyst that makes it virtually undetectable unless you know exactly what to look for." "The antidote?" William demanded. "Will Ilara's antidote work?" "It should counteract the Moonsbane," Master Aldwin said carefully. "But this other component, I cannot say what effect it might have." Ilara stepped forward, her young face set with determination. "We have no choice. Every moment we delay, Father grows weaker." William looked between his sister and the dying king visible through the doorway. Theodore's breathing was so shallow now that the sheets barely moved. The physician said he had hours at most. "Do it," William commanded, as Master Aldwin prepared the antidote, mixing it carefully with honey wine to ease its administration. The door to the chambers burst open. Queen Consort Isabella swept in, flanked by Lady Morgana and a dozen guards wearing her personal colors. "I heard disturbing rumors," Isabella said, her voice sharp as winter ice. "That you intend to give His Majesty an untested substance without the Council's approval." "Get out," William snarled, drawing his sword. "You have no authority here. I have equal authority to you, as established by the Regency Council," Isabella replied smoothly. "Any decision regarding the king's treatment requires both our approval." Lord Commander Marcus stepped between them. "Your Majesty, the tests confirmed the presence of Moonsbane in His Majesty's blood. Surely you want to see him recover." Isabella's perfect mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and desperate beneath. "Of course I do. Which is why I cannot allow you to potentially hasten his death with unproven remedies." "Unproven?" Ilara stepped forward, the ancient book clutched to her chest. "Or inconvenient? Tell me, stepmother, what would you do if Father recovered? If he learned of your attempts to usurp the throne?" "I have usurped nothing," Isabella said coldly. "Everything I have done has been within the law. Ravencrest law, perhaps." Lord Blackwood's voice came from the doorway. The ancient advisor entered, supported by 2 young pages but with fire still burning in his eyes. "But we are not in Ravencrest, Your Majesty. We are in Valoria, where poisoning the king is still considered treason." Isabella laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. "You have no proof I poisoned anyone. The presence of a Ravencrest poison proves nothing. Any merchant could have brought it into the kingdom." "Then you won't object to drinking this," Ilara said suddenly, producing a second vial from her robes. "It's the same antidote we're giving Father. If you're innocent, it will have no effect on you." The chamber fell silent, Isabella's eyes fixed on the vial with an unreadable expression. Her supporters shifted nervously, hands moving to weapons. "You ask me to drink an unknown substance prepared by a child who has already accused me of murder?" Isabella asked. "How do I know that isn't poison itself?" "Because I'll drink it first," Ilara said simply. Before anyone could stop her, she uncorked the vial and took a large swallow. William lunged forward. "Ilara, no." But his sister stood steady, meeting Isabella's gaze without flinching. "Your move, stepmother." The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. Isabella's green eyes calculated rapidly, weighing options and outcomes. Finally, she smiled, a cold, terrible smile that sent chills down every spine in the room. "Clever little princess," she said softly. "But you've miscalculated. You see, the game was never just about poison or thrones or even kingdoms. It was about transformation." She moved with inhuman speed, snatching the vial from Alara's hand and draining it in one swift motion. Then she threw back her head and laughed as her body began to convulse. "Did you really think I was just another ambitious queen?" Isabella gasped between spasms. "Did none of you wonder why the eastern barbarians chose now to attack? Why strange ships gather in your harbors? Why your king fell ill just as the ancient seals began to weaken?" William moved to strike her down. But Isabella raised a hand and he found himself frozen in place, held by invisible chains. Power crackled around the queen consort like lightning, her beautiful features shifting and changing, becoming something older, more terrible. The prophecy told the truth, Isabella continued, her voice now echoing with harmonics that hurt to hear. But not the truth you thought. The test was never about who would wear the crown. It was about who would be strong enough to face what's coming. Alara stepped forward, unafraid despite the magical energies swirling through the chamber. "You're not from Ravencrest at all, are you?" Isabella's transformation continued, her human guise falling away like discarded clothes. What stood revealed was neither fully human nor entirely other. Something caught between worlds, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. "I am the Herald," she said, her voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Sent to test your kingdom's readiness for the real war that approaches. The barbarians, the ships, even the poison, all were trials to see if Valoria had the strength to survive what comes next." "You killed my father," William roared, straining against the magical bonds. "I gave him the same test I gave your kingdom," the creature that had been Isabella replied. "He failed, too weak in body and spirit to resist. Just as your kingdom fails now, divided and squabbling while darkness gathers at your borders." Master Aldwin, who had been frozen in terror, suddenly spoke, the other component in the poison. It was essence of transformation, not meant to kill, but to change. The herald smiled with too many teeth. The old alchemist sees clearly. Your king could have become something greater, could have evolved to face the threat. Instead, he clung to his humanity and withered, as will your kingdom unless what? Alara demanded. "Unless one of you proves worthy of the true crown," the herald said. "Not the pretty circlet of gold and gems you fight over, but the crown of storms itself, the artifact that has protected your kingdom for 1,000 years, waiting for one strong enough to wake its power." The chamber shook as ancient magic stirred. Through the windows, they could see dark clouds gathering with unnatural speed. In the harbor, the mysterious ships raised black sails marked with symbols that hurt to look upon. And from the east came the sound of war drums, not just barbarian tribes but something far worse marching alongside them. "Choose quickly," the herald commanded. "The poison in your king's veins carries the same transformation. One of you must take his burden, accept the change, become something more than human to save what remains of humanity in this land." William finally broke free of the magical restraints through sheer force of will. "I'll do it. I'm the rightful heir." "No," Alara said quietly. "The prophecy spoke of 3 paths, remember? Yours leads to honorable defeat, fighting the darkness with steel and courage but ultimately failing because you cannot adapt. Isabella's, the herald's, leads to transformation without humanity, power without compassion. And the 3rd path?" the herald asked, genuinely curious now. Alara walked to her father's bedside, taking his cold hand in hers. "Is accepting that sometimes we must change not by force or ambition, but by choice, by understanding that true strength comes not from seizing power but from knowing when to share it." She turned to William. "Brother, you have the strength of our ancestors, the courage of a true king, but you cannot face this threat alone." Then to the herald. "And you, creature of change, you understand the power of transformation but have forgotten what it means to be human, to fight for love rather than survival." Finally, she looked at the assembled nobles, Isabella's supporters and William's loyalists alike. "And all of you have divided this kingdom with your petty ambitions when we should have been united." The ancient book in her hands began to glow with soft golden light. "The crown of storms chooses not the strongest or the most cunning, but the wisest. And wisdom says that in times of greatest peril, we must set aside our differences and become something greater together." King Theodore's eyes fluttered open, focused for the first time in days. His voice was weak but clear. "My daughter, you have passed the test." The herald's form flickered, becoming more human again, confusion replacing arrogance. This isn't possible. The prophecy spoke of one champion. Not a kingdom united. Elara smiled sadly. You tested us for strength and cunning, but never for wisdom. The true crown of storms isn't an object. It's the bond between ruler and ruled, the trust between a kingdom and its guardians. The chamber filled with golden light as the true crown of storms manifested. Not a physical crown, but a nimbus of power that settled over Elara, then expanded to encompass William, even touching the herald with its radiance. I cannot rule alone, Elara declared, her voice carrying new authority. William, you shall be Lord Protector, leading our armies against the darkness. Isabella, Herald, whatever you truly are, if you choose to stand with us, your knowledge of the enemy will be invaluable. The herald stared at her in amazement. You would trust me? After everything? The prophecy spoke of transformation, Elara said simply. Perhaps it's time you remembered what it means to be human, to be part of something greater than yourself. Outside, the storm clouds began to part. The mysterious ships in the harbor raised white flags of parley instead of black sails of war. The barbarian drums fell silent, their supernatural allies suddenly uncertain without the herald's commanding will. King Theodore managed to sit up, strength slowly returning to his limbs. The antidote, combined with Elara's wisdom, had broken not just the poison but the test itself. My children, he said, looking at both William and Elara with pride. You have saved not just my life but our kingdom. The regency is dissolved. Elara shall be my heir, with William as her strong right hand. And, Isabella? Lord Blackwood asked carefully. The herald's form had fully stabilized now, once again appearing as the beautiful queen consort but with something fundamental changed in her bearing. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something almost like wonder. She began, then stopped, struggling with emotions that seemed foreign to her. I have been the herald for so long. I had forgotten there could be another way. I accept Princess Elara's offer, if she will have me. My knowledge of the dark forces, freely given, in exchange for the chance to remember what I once was. Elara nodded gracefully. Then let us begin. The real threat still gathers beyond our borders, but now we face it united. Strength and wisdom and change, working as one. As the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the palace in golden light, the kingdom of Valoria stood transformed, not by poison or magic or force, but by the simple recognition that in unity lay their only hope of survival. The Game of Thrones had ended not with a single victor but with the understanding that some games are not meant to be won but transcended. The Crown of Storms had found not one worthy bearer but three, each bringing what the others lacked. In the great hall, nobles who had been at each other's throats hours before now worked side by side, preparing defenses and strategies. The eastern fortresses were reinforced not just with soldiers but with ancient knowledge the herald provided. The mysterious ships became allies once their crews learned that the herald's test had been passed in a way none had foreseen. William stood on the battlements, no longer consumed by rage but focused on the greater threat. Beside him, the herald, still called Isabella by most, pointed out weaknesses in their defenses with the same precision she had once used to sow discord. And in the throne room, Princess Elara sat not on the throne but beside it, surrounded by books and advisors, piecing together the fragments of prophecy and history that would guide them through the dark times ahead. Her father, recovering more each day, watched with pride as his youngest child proved that wisdom could triumph where strength and cunning alone would fail. The chaos that had threatened to tear Valoria apart had instead forged it anew, stronger and more united than ever before. The true test had never been about who would wear the crown, but whether they could set aside their individual ambitions for the greater good. As night fell on this day of transformation, three figures stood together on the highest tower of the palace. A prince who had learned that honor meant more than rigid tradition, a herald who had rediscovered her humanity, and a young princess who had found the wisdom to see that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemies but from turning them into allies. The Crown of Storms pulsed with quiet power above them, no longer waiting to choose a single champion but blessing all who proved worthy through wisdom, courage, and the willingness to change. The real war was still to come. Dark forces gathered beyond the borders, ancient evils stirred by the weakening of the seals. But Valoria would meet them united, transformed by a test that had threatened to destroy them, but had instead revealed their greatest strength. the ability to rise above individual ambition and become something greater together. In the end, the prophecy had been fulfilled in a way none had expected. The crown had been contested, old blood and new ambition had clashed, and shadows had gathered. But from that chaos had emerged, not a single victor but a kingdom reborn, ready to face whatever darkness the future might bring. The Game of Thrones was over. The real story of a kingdom united against the dark, of transformation through wisdom rather than force, of enemies becoming allies in the face of greater threats, had just begun.